Hey guys, so we have a big Mars-Saturn square going on in the sky, 0 degrees of mutable signs that we need to talk about in the energy this weekend. Mars is leaving Scorpio, entering the sign of Sagittarius, which is generally quite like a flamboyant and adventure-seeking energy, very expanded energy levels going on with Mars and Sagittarius. However, because we currently have Saturn at 0 degrees of Pisces, another mutable sign, Mars moving into Sagittarius, hitting 0 Sag, is going to set up a 0 degree mutable square between Saturn and between Mars. This is traditionally, generically, okay, one of the more conflict-oriented, volatile aspects in all of astrology. Can definitely bring up like clashes of wills, things, people, situations pitted up against each other, vying for power, vying for authority, vying for control in terms of the actions that are happening when we're talking about these two dynamics. Themes of contraction and expansion, repression and expression, like a tradition versus rebirth and something new going on. And generally, you know, it could be very eruptive in terms of the way that energy is expressing. Saturn represses and holds things down. Mars can be anger and passion. So there can be these like repressed feelings that can't be contained anymore, that have been pressurized, that sort of find their way out, and things can definitely just get a bit testy. So, you know, we got a lot to talk about today, you guys. There's so many ways that things could be going on in the context of all of this. It is a very tense, intense energy though, and I'm recommending you guys sort of, you know, stay home if you can, avoid crowds. You know, the Black Friday thing may not be the best choice on the menu this weekend. So let's get into it, you guys. Let's talk about this energy in all of the details, what it might be looking like for us, and generally, you know, what perhaps we can expect as energy plays out this weekend. Welcome back to my channel, you guys. Today is Friday, November 24th, 2023. My name is Aubrey. This is your astrological outlook of the weekend, where we are narrating the shift of the ages. In this video, we are going to talk about the energy that we have present November 24th, Friday, through the 26th, Sunday, and all that may be accompanying it in terms of its manifestation in our reality. So that's what we're doing. I hope everybody had a beautiful Thanksgiving holiday who celebrated. I do think that this perhaps is not the Black Friday that you may really want to get out there, okay? It's just, we have a Mars square Saturn playing out that is being emphasized by the placement of the moon. It's being emphasized by the placement of the sun. Both luminaries are really kind of pointing towards the Mars dynamic of things in the square to Saturn. This is literally just like looking, you know, this is just like prime time energy for some type of like eruption or explosion or conflict or fights or violence. You know what I mean? This is not the type of energy where we really want to be like in the mix. And it's really funny also, just getting started in this report, let's dive right into the symbolism. Saturn currently is at 0 degrees of Pisces. The Sabian symbol of that degree is a crowded public marketplace. So I honestly, as I said, you know, I don't think that this is the day or this is the weekend, if you can help it, to really like try to put yourself out there in these big shopping crowds. Like literally Saturn is legitimately, literally referring to that via his 0 degree placement in the sign of Pisces, and the Sabian symbol associated with that, a crowded public marketplace, and Mars is in the exact square. Mars and Saturn in a square, this is traditionally just not one of, you know, the most generically positive aspects in all of astrology. In ancient astrology, which is not necessarily the lens that we need to view everything through all the time, but in ancient traditional astrology, Saturn and Mars were both known as the great malefics. And of course, a square aspect, this is the most challenging, difficult aspect, conflict-oriented aspect in astrology. So when we've got, you know, these two planets that can be seen or can have a tendency to bring what appears on the surface to be maybe like not the best circumstances in a conflict-oriented aspect, it could just be primed, okay, again, for some type of like volatility or something of a more eruptive nature to go on. Clashes of power, I mean, think about it. Saturn is authority, okay? Mars is the ego. Saturn is like the older generations of things and tradition and like the mastery class of things, and like the the controlling class of things, the executive branch of things, and Mars, this is like the subordinates and the soldiers and like the energy that makes the mechanism run, okay? And it's things that are coming to a head and things that have been under pressure as well. All right. But as I will say, and because I don't want to, you know, just be talking about this Mars Saturn and, you know, act like it's just destined to be this, you know, more like conflict oriented, difficult time. This energy has a tendency of manifesting along those lines, but it is often for the purpose of some type of maturation that is actually making us stronger, making us wiser, making us better, making things in our life or our reality actually like more stable or more steady or more secure somehow, like through the lessons or through the wisdom that we gain through going through the experiences. Again, like I feel like it's coming back to, because Mars is also the self, okay? Saturn, this is like duty, obligation, the judge, right? This is passing the test. This is gaining maturity. So this is an opportunity also through whatever conflict we need to rise through at this point in time to actually do so in like a more self-disciplined, self-correcting, self-controlled, mature type of way, or at least for there to be, even if that is not the way we find ourselves expressing in this energy, at least for there to be like on the back end when all is said and done, some type of maturity or wisdom or strength or endurance or stability in and of ourselves that we somehow realize that we gained through just these very experiences that manifest in this energy. Patience perhaps as well. So we don't want to necessarily judge everything that's happening right now, everything that's happening this weekend on the surface value in terms of just like getting angry or getting upset if there's like setbacks or frustrations that we're encountering. It will behoove us, you know, it is in our best interest to seek, with Mars moving into the sign of Sagittarius, the wisdom that is coming through in the whatever challenges perhaps or difficulty, whatever that could be manifesting, okay? Also, I feel like, you know, if we can move through this energy, and I was mentioning this in my last video, with maybe a more conscious or active level of self-discipline or of self-control, perhaps in the face of things that are, you know, causing these more heated reactions and stuff to be like stirring around within us, I do feel like ultimately like that will benefit us. Because another thing, you know, Mars is our action. Mars is what we're doing. Mars is how we're behaving. Saturn is consequences. Saturn is karma. So this can also be like any type of, you know, unleashed, like careless or reckless actions that are going on, having some type of consequence or needing to like face some type of judgment or some type of like karmic blowback that happens quite rapidly also with the Mars element of things. So all of that. Okay, now let's get into our actual report of the day so I can give you guys some more organized thoughts on this topic. Mars is entering the sign of Sagittarius on Friday. Now, before we sort of go back to this whole theme of Mars and Saturn in the square, which is the focal point, of course, of our video today, which is the primary energy that we have going on this weekend. And honestly, though, like this on Friday, the 24th, this is when this aspect comes exact because Mars enters Sagittarius. But we've been dealing with this relative dynamic of energy for this, basically, essentially this whole past week, really hitting more of a climax on the 22nd on Wednesday, and then again today on Friday on the 24th. And that's because the sun is also right there as well. The sun and Mars just made their conjunction in the sign of Scorpio, then the sun moved ahead, entered Sagittarius, and the sun squared Saturn. So the sun is sort of leading the way. The sun and Mars in a square to Saturn can bring like a lot of the same themes. I mean, Mars is the fire planet and the sun is this fireball that gives life to everything, right? And they both have to do with ego. They both have to do with life force energy to some extent and how that is flowing, okay? And also, I will say, you know, with this square to Saturn, this can also bring like lowered health, lowered vitality, lowered energy levels, lower like immune systems and stuff like that. You're really going to want to try to take good care of your health this week as well. Make sure that you're, you know, not like burning yourself out somehow, trying to fight some battle that perhaps there's no winning in this energy also, because that type of thing could also be going on, just constantly like this pressure cooker of things sort of like coming to a head, pitted up against one another, but not really going anywhere, like not really any type of breakthroughs happening, just sort of like the slow burn energy again, which is what creates these opportunities and this potential for some type of perhaps like eruptive force to also come through as well when we've got this energy going on. But let's talk first about Mars entering the sign of Sagittarius, and then we'll talk about it in the context of this square also that it's setting up with Saturn in some more detail. Also on Friday's kind of a crazy day, to be honest. Like, Mars square Saturn is such a potent vibe. I would not be surprised if we saw some type of like fireworks or like real just like things coming to a head in some type of critical way on like a world stage type of level, because this energy is so specific and so just significant in terms of the way that these energies are coming together. 0 degrees. We've also got a moon in the sign of Aries squaring Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. Aries ruled by Mars, Capricorn ruled by Saturn. So the moon and Pluto in their square by sign are ruled by Saturn and Mars in their square at 0 degrees of mutable signs. And so both luminaries, the sun and the moon, the sun is in conjunction, like I said, the sun is in conjunction to Mars and square to Saturn as well. Both luminaries are playing this game also, and that Aries moon square Pluto Capricorn, like that's also like a volatile emotional aspect. That's like a breaking point aspect as well. So there could be some things that are just kind of like hitting the fan, all right, on Friday. But again, you know, and like I feel like a broken record when I keep saying this, and I'm going to try not to like say it a million times in this report, but like self-discipline and self-control, making sure that we are not being reckless, even if there's like maybe an urge to rush ahead or to say something or do something. You know, we need to think it through. We also have Mercury squaring Neptune this weekend in the same signs. Sagittarius, Mercury, Pisces, Neptune. So there's like a general disorientation in like the informational mental field of things this weekend too. Like, we're probably not perceiving things entirely accurately. There's probably like, people are definitely probably going to be in like states of confusion and delusion and I don't know, like acting quite crazy. And also I keep starting and trying to get myself on track with talking about this Mars and Sagittarius energy, and then like wandering off onto like a tangent of expansion about all this other energy that we have going on. So I'm gonna get myself back to the Mars and Sagittarius, but that moon aspect that is happening with the square to Pluto, like that's also, you know, it's doubling down on this Mars square Saturn energy. And they're happening at the same time. And Mars moving into Sagittarius, like this is generally sort of like a wild energy on its own, huge energy levels. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion. Mars is our passion, our motivation, you know, what we want to go after, our courage, but it's also anger and it's also ego and stuff like that. So, you know, expanded energy levels while we have Mars transiting the sign of Sagittarius, but it's expanding all of the Mars octaves, all of the Mars archetypes. So, you know, more angry and more aggressive, but also more courageous, more passionate, and more motivated. Passions are likely to be running high over the course of the next couple months while Mars is transiting Sagittarius. So it's a more overt energetic expression than when we have Mars in Scorpio, which is the energy that we're coming out of. Mars in Scorpio is more behind the scenes preparation in terms of the way that energy functions and flows, and then it sort of, you know, hits and makes a big impact when every domino has been set up properly behind the scenes. Very, very strategic. Mars in Sagittarius is not that way. Mars in Sagittarius is like big moves in the moment, not necessarily like doing all of the background, but just kind of being center stage and performing in some type of like big or significant way. It's a very action-oriented energy. Of course, Mars in a fire sign, flamboyant, enthusiastic, assertive, and it's more of an overtly dominant energy as well. Mars in the sign of Sagittarius, like this is energy that sort of makes it hard for us to sit still. There's a need to be on the go, a need to be on the move, to like traveling to different places and having different experiences, broadening our horizons. This is a very like thrill-seeking, excitement, enthusiast, like adventure. I need to be on an adventure type of energy, like wanting new experiences, wanting to see more, wanting to see the world, wanting to understand things and like get a taste of sort of everything and just have a broadened perspective of it all. Big energy also around themes of truth, wisdom, and philosophical ideologies. When we have Mars in the sign of Sagittarius, this energy also like loves the outdoors, physical activities, you know, hiking, rock climbing, mountain biking, exploring, and traveling along the like adventurer lines and stuff like that. And this is more like broad, long distance travel and stuff. Especially people that have Mars in Sagittarius may really feel themselves like itching to get up and go over this next couple of months when they have their Mars return. Now, the lower octaves of Mars and Sagittarius, of course, Mars is also our ego, right? And it's also anger. Like I said, it's going to expand all of the Martian qualities, so people will be, you know, quicker to anger, have more expansive responses, and be more willing to overtly engage in conflict. This can also be quite a grandiose energy, quite a like maniacal or like manic expression of energy if taken too far as well. These super inflated egos, like believing that one is like a god, you know what I mean? Action based on beliefs and philosophies as well. And the caution, the primary caution when we have Mars in the sign of Sagittarius is not to like bite off more than we can chew, not to take on more than we can handle, because it has a tendency of like inflating our sense of self, like seeing ourselves as, you know, we believe in ourselves, okay? We have confidence in ourselves. We're very optimistic about like what we can do and what we can take on and what we can handle when we have Mars in the sign of Sagittarius. But Mars is not just like forever, always, perpetually in the sign of Sagittarius. So we want to make sure that we don't like get ourselves in over our head, okay, over the next 2 months while Mars transits Sagittarius, because then when Mars moves into Capricorn, you know, this is more like minimalistic action. This can be sort of needing to like refine things or to pull back. Capricorn, right? Limitations, restraints. So we don't want to like get in over our head or bite off more than we can chew in this Mars and Sagittarius energy. Probably just something to keep in mind as we go throughout the course of Mars's transit entirely. But here's the thing. Now I want you guys to take everything that I just said and sort of like add this disclaimer to it, that as Mars is entering Sagittarius this year, which would activate all of those traits and tendencies that I just got done describing, he's of course, as I mentioned in the first majority of this report so far, coming into a square with Saturn. Saturn limits things. Saturn holds things back. Saturn represses things. So there's a good chance that actually the entire Mars Sagittarius transit that we have going on this year could operate along the lines of a more repressed expression of the Mars and Sagittarius vibes. It could really, this whole Mars Sag cycle, because this is the chart of Mars's entrance into Sag this year, could be a process of like us coming up against what we can't do or what's been blocking us, like this desire to like move forward or to expand somehow, like coming into context, or to like have fun or to free ourselves somehow, but like constantly feel like we're up against some sort of like oppression or some sort of like limitation or some sort of like lid going on somehow. However, like I said, this is also indicating that once we make it through this period of time, some type of like wisdom coming from the challenges that we endure through, blessings and success. We're talking about the sign of Sagittarius, Jupiter. Jupiter brings blessings in terms of delayed gratification as a result of whatever we make it through, whatever we overcome, whatever we learn through the process of what we've got going on, the maturity that we gain from the experiences that happen throughout this period of time. Okay, so as Mars enters Sag, which would therefore kind of like ignite these archetypal themes and qualities that I described. He comes into exact square with Saturn in Pisces, and this is simultaneously repressing those same, that expression that would seek to manifest in this energy. So something about repressing a process of a personal expansion, causing conflicts internally or externally in this energy throughout the course of this weekend. This is a very powerful Mars-Saturn square. Mars-Saturn squares, like I said, this traditionally is quite a significant aspect and has a tendency of making its manifestations known. But this one, it really is like firepower supercharged. It's happening at 0 degrees. This is this critical aspect, this critical degree, and 0 degrees of a fire sign. When we have planets at 0 degrees of fire sign, this really can be sort of like unrestrained fire element energy that is pushing things to happen. Okay, fire energy is it's a creative force. It's an action-oriented energy, and Mars is our creative energy and like how we're acting and how we're behaving as well. So with Mars at 0 degrees of Sagittarius, this is going to be explosive. And then the sun is right there as well. This is enhancing the intensity of this fire energy. And then also, where do we have the moon? We have the moon in the sign of Aries, another fire sign, which happens to be ruled by Mars. When we have a planet in a sign, we have to look to the ruler of that sign, because the planet in that sign, the activity of the planet in that sign is, you know, directly playing into the ruler of that sign's activity somehow. So what is the ruler of Aries doing? Mars. The ruler of Aries is an exact 0 degree mutable square. Mutable signs, this is a transitional process too. This is the ending of one thing and the beginning of something else when we have mutable energy going on. And the moon in Aries is also forming the square to Pluto, which is also death and rebirth, endings and beginnings, at the very, very tail end of the sign of Capricorn that is ruled by Saturn. So this moon-Pluto square is emphasizing in a huge way what is happening with the Mars-Saturn square. The sun in the conjunction to Mars square to Saturn, emphasizing in a huge way what is happening with the Mars-Saturn square. 0 degrees, like I said, very critical degrees. This is a super, super powerful activation, and there are likely to be some very significant events, world events, life events that also transpire with this. I literally just said transpire with this instead of transpire. That having just come out of my mouth, I am going to say that there could be issues going on with fire, and like fire as a more destructive force throughout this period of time, like literal issues with fire stuff, okay? So be mindful, be very, very careful, use extreme care and extreme caution if you're involved with anything to do with fire or heat, or also like sharp blades or knives or anything like that. The weapons also like guns, firearms, like all that type of stuff. Just use extra caution, extra care if you are involved in that this weekend. This is not the weekend where I would like recommend like maybe going to the shooting range or something like that. Definitely we kind of want to be more hermit mode. The more that we can like be self-contained this weekend and less part of the public ongoings, I feel like this is generally probably just in our best interest. It's just that type of energy going on. And this energy, it's also bringing things that are just like fundamentally different or even like oppositional in nature up against one another, and kind of like putting them in a position to like vie for control of a situation. We're talking about Saturn, limitation, restriction, oppression in the sign of Pisces, which is in a water sign, right? And then we're talking about Mars plus the sun, passion, anger, motivation, ego, in fire sign Sagittarius. So we're talking about water and fire. We're talking about Mars and Saturn, which also a lot of times is a very like kind of like a oppositional energy. We're talking about like older and younger. We're talking about like the authority and the subordinates like I was describing earlier. Okay, so there is just this extreme clash between like polarizing forces, sort of, you know, bringing generations to a head as well. Issues primarily, you know, authority and freedom, illusion and truth when we're talking about Pisces and Sagittarius, expansion, Jupiter, Sagittarius, and contraction, Saturn, Pisces, fantasy, and, you know, faith, fantasy versus reality. All of these type of themes could be the source and sort of where conflict is stemming from with these two planets and those two signs. And right now, and the energy right now, trying to make anything happen in the world is probably going to be more frustrating than, you know, the benefit that you could get out of it. We should definitely not be trying to take ourselves, our efforts, or like criticism or judgment from others too seriously in the energy this weekend. We definitely don't want to be defining our self-image based on anybody else's skewed projection, okay, of reality right now. Remember, we also have Mercury, Neptune coming into a conjunction from the same signs, Pisces and Sagittarius. Nobody's seeing things clearly. Everybody's living in like their own little bubble, trying to sort out what's actually happening, what's actually real and what's not, what I do believe and what I don't believe, you know, the authority maybe that I am willing to listen to versus like who I feel like I need to stand up against, all of these type of things. Like us really trying to like, people are likely to, again, be having some serious inner conflicts going on between like this desire to like free themselves or express themselves somehow, and simultaneously this other like more repressive force, you know, or this limiting force that is holding them back, like holding on and also wanting to be free somehow, could definitely be things that we're struggling with internally in this energy. And all of this pressure, right, coupled with all of this fire, it's like a pressure cooker out there, right? So we don't want to put ourselves into the pressure cooker of the matrix if we don't absolutely have to. So that's my recommendations as we move through this weekend. Again, Saturn, a crowded public marketplace. Saturn, you know, if we can avoid it, I think that it's definitely for the best, okay? And, you know, as I said, we really could see some pretty serious things coming to a head on the world stage, or in terms of also like bosses and careers. This is, again, this theme of like the higher up, like the boss and the subordinate also coming to a head. And I do think that but here's the thing, this is where all of this is going, right? We have this, I mean, squares, when we have a square energy going on, there needs to be some type of breakthrough to like an evolution to move forward. And I feel like this energy, what it's leading to, or at least how it seems to be, how I'm perceiving it energetically in terms of where this is going, is to some type of change of guard in terms of like where like some type of old control system gives way to some type of maybe like fresh leadership or new energy somehow. Now, of course, with the moon in Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and the square to Pluto in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn on the day when Saturn squares Mars, this is, like I said, doubling down on this energy, but like downfall, conflict related to long-standing orders of power and control. With the Pluto in the end of Capricorn element, this again also could be bringing up themes related to Pluto's entire transit through the sign of Capricorn, things that have transpired since 2008 in terms of government, authority, financial institutions. There seems to be some type of change of guard that is underway right now, or that is vying for power or transition in this energy, whether it be obvious to us or not, or whether we're just sort of like feeling it in terms of like an internalized angst that we're picking up via the collective energy. All the arrows, in my opinion, based on the way that we have things going on right now, are pointing directly to a destined shift in power dynamics, okay? In sort of like this change of guard situation from the power and control dynamics of the past to this new energy, this new leadership that seems to be being birthed and coming in, and the energy right now as well. And it's also on an individual level. I feel like this is representing the conflict that we may be facing internally between holding on to our past and who we've always been and stepping into our destiny. Like, to me, that's really what this is meaning on an individual level. The difficulty and the challenge of overcoming our past self and the limitations that maybe we've existed within, especially in terms of our beliefs with Saturn and Pisces, and allowing ourselves to be free to step into this divine image of ourselves in alignment with an activated destiny that we're feeling compelled to right now, and to allow ourselves to go through this personal rebirth into a more expanded version of a personal truth or authentic expression that would be associated with the Mars Sagittarius energy. So, you know, it's these inner battles, and it's also these outer battles. But it really feels like to me that the fresh energy, the Mars energy, the fire energy is the energy that's being supported. The expansion of self in alignment with a personal truth. Like, to me, this is the dimension of the energy that ultimately wins, despite whatever, you know, heated battles might need to go on in order to arrive at that point. Now, just for some more optimism, okay, as I said, we do have the moon in Aries supporting Mars. We'll also hit the North Node before making the square to Pluto. Of course, the North Node, this is the destiny point. So there is a faded dimension to the transitions that are happening right now, the things that are coming to a head. And we've got the moon in square to Pluto. We've got the sun in square to Saturn. We've got Pluto in Capricorn. It's all about these long-standing orders of power and control and the cosmic push to break through and get a new energy planted right now. And to do that, there might be fireworks, there might be eruptions, there could be battles breaking out, but ultimately I do think it's about this need collectively, universally, to experience some type of freedom and expansion into truth and personal self-expression somehow right now. Mercury also in the sign of Sagittarius trines the North Node in Aries this weekend. Let's talk about some of the peripheral aspects that we have going on this weekend as well, which would be Mercury in trine to the North Node. This could bring some type of faded news, information, or messaging somehow that is maybe involved in all of this. And because Mercury is also coming into square with Neptune, this could leave us feeling even more like confused or disoriented somehow. Again, questioning everything is generally a theme of this weekend also. Distortion in the informational field, an inability to perceive things clearly as they really are. We don't want to, you know, people are likely to be acting delusional. People are probably going to be acting real crazy. And again, major clashes or fights could be going on between various people's individual delusions coming to a head together, or even, you know, illusion and truth, you know, fact and fantasy, these like beliefs and ideologies, these Sagittarius Pisces themes that we have going on. Ideological and belief system based battles and conflicts could be a huge thing this weekend. I personally do not recommend involving yourself in any of that. People can really only accept something or see something from a different perspective when they come to a point where they choose to, or they are open to it for some reason. And it's really just, at the end of the day, not worth trying to teach somebody something that they are not receptive to. And it's definitely not going to be in our best interest in this energy. And again, this sort of just like, you know, clash going on where nobody's really budging and no ground is being made, that is just like perpetuating conflict. We just don't really want to engage in this if we don't have to. Now, this is Friday. This is the main day of the weekend. Friday is one of the more probably tense days of this whole month. As I said, Wednesday, this past Wednesday as well. But on Saturday, we do have the moon, thank goodness, moving into a conjunction with Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. This should like elevate spirits to some extent. Like, this should return, you know, a layer maybe of like some positivity or some optimism to the energy that's going on. I mean, Mars and square to Saturn, this can be a pretty like bleak, pessimistic energy that manifests. But you know, with the moon in the conjunction to Jupiter, this at least it's going to be expanding energy levels, and it should be uplifting emotions on some level, generally positive. However, with all of the Sagittarius energy, Mercury, Mars, and the sun, and then when we've got the moon in the conjunction to Jupiter, who is the ruler of Sagittarius, this is like tons of Sag energy. So this actually could be a day where we can see these manifestations of the Sag energy along the lines of things being quite grandiose or being quite over the top. Definitely more upbeat vibes, but people could just be getting a little bit out of control, or just taking things a little bit overboard. This is definitely also one of those days where we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, because with Mars, listen, Mars and the sun in the sign of Sagittarius, this is like the motivation to do the most. With Jupiter in the conjunction to the moon in the sign of Taurus, this is spend the most, eat the most, indulge the most, enjoy the most, feel the most, okay? Just things to keep in mind. And then on Sunday, the moon in the sign of Taurus will move into a conjunction with Uranus as we are preparing for our full moon in the sign of Gemini that's going to be happening on Monday. Yes, that's right. All of this energy that we have playing out all weekend is the energy that is building towards the full moon on Monday, that is also going to be in a conjunction and an opposition to Mars and a square to Saturn. So this energy actually is kind of just like building and expanding throughout the course of the weekend. Of course, full moons are energetic climax each month. So we've got that pending. All right, but Sunday with the moon in the conjunction to Uranus, right? This could be a weird day. This could be an unusual day. This could be a day where you just like can't take it anymore and you really need to, like, I don't know, maybe change some things up, do some things different. Maybe you just like find yourself doing something out of the ordinary that you don't usually do. All this type of stuff can happen when we have strong Uranus influence, desire to do something different, just spontaneously doing different things, having plans to do stuff like out of the ordinary. So again, like, or just feeling like we need to make a change internally. These could be all the vibes that we have playing out on Sunday. Also, and this is another aspect of things that could really be playing into all that's manifesting right now. Venus is coming into a conjunction with the South Node in the sign of Libra, and this is going to be an energy that is present for our full moon that we're going to talk about on Monday as well. But this is going to have to do with like people from the past, relationships from the past agreements, okay, past partnerships, things to do with the past, generally things that we've loved in the past, coming back, like having some type of prominence, gaining closure, being released from. And we also have Mercury coming into a trine and a sextile with the nodes on Sunday as well. This, again, is like faded messages or information or ideas or learning something related to the past somehow that is helping us to let go of one thing and move towards something else. There's a definite emphasis on both the past and the future coming up somehow in the context of this energy, which again, if we're talking about Mars and we're talking about Saturn, Saturn would be the past, Mars would be the future. And I've told you guys, everything is oriented towards the future right now. Everything is oriented towards the fresh energy, the rebirth energy, like the newness that is coming in, and a transition out of structures and belief systems and power and control dynamics and, you know, regulating bodies, authorities, all that type of stuff that have been going on from the past, legacy type of stuff. So I do feel like ultimately that this energy right now is representing things coming to a head in terms of some progression that's underway, in terms of a transition of power that is bridging us from an old way of doing things into a new way of doing things. But the process and, you know, of getting there could be bringing up some real significant conflicts. And again, that could be going on within us as well in terms of like wanting to move forward, wanting to become something new, like wanting to step into this destiny, but also holding on to something or feeling held back somehow, and the repressed anger. And again, self-discipline, you guys, self-control, slowing down. Saturn slows things down. Mars is our action. So, you know, the more careful and meticulous and slowly we can do things this weekend, the more likely we are to like not face as much resistance, as much conflict, all that. And again, like I recommend, you know, going a bit hermit mode this weekend, trying to maybe avoid big crowds, big public places and stuff like that, just because there's so much potential for this volatility to be just kind of like erupting, you know what I mean? Like out of nowhere because of the pressurized nature of it as we move through essentially this entire weekend. Let's talk about some symbols for a minute. Number 1, the position of the sun on Friday, 3 degrees of the sign of Sagittarius. That Sabian symbol is 2 men playing chess. So again, sides, opponents, you know, competition, a clash. All right. So that's just the generalized energy that's coming through symbolically. Like there are 2 things, you know, both of them are trying to win, okay? And then we have Mars at 0 degrees of Sagittarius. Retired army veterans gather to reawaken old memories. There could be something about the past or something, again, retired army veterans gather to reawaken old memories. Again, it's like, it's bringing up to me this like, where we've been and where we're going now, what has been and what is to come, you know, memories of the past, something about the past. We're also going through this transitional process and this rebirth process, like we're moving on somehow. And then, like I said, Saturn at 0 degrees of Pisces in the square to Mars, a crowded public marketplace. So, you know, do what you will with that. And that's basically what I've got to say about the energy today. And the energy moving through this weekend. It is what it is. We, you know, with all the Sagittarius energy, Sagittarius is the truth seeker. Sagittarius seeks to understand from a higher perspective when we're operating out of the higher octaves of this energy. You know, maybe the conflicts that perhaps, you know, if they manifest in our lives this weekend, maybe what we really need to do is try to see from a bigger picture, you know, what we can gain through whatever it is we got to navigate, whatever ways we got to go through. Because there is also this energy of delayed gratification, but also simultaneously like consequences for actions that are not well thought out and that are, you know, too reckless or too just like based on like this impassioned whatever. You know, we want to be very, very careful allowing our passionate emotions or the fire burning within us to cause us to take some type of reckless action without thinking it through, because that's the type of thing that can, you know, just cause some issues for us. But the self-discipline, the self-control, the seeking the higher understanding, the seeking the bigger picture, the confronting ourselves and looking for, you know, the hang-ups that we have internally perhaps that are keeping us caught between wanting to move forward and feeling pulled back, or, you know, just generally like if that is something that we feel like is a force being exerted on us, you know, from the outside experience or the outside world, what lesson we can learn through this process that can actually like help us in some way as we move forward somehow. So that's what I'm gonna say, you guys, about the energy for this weekend. We're gonna get through it and we're gonna be better because of it. So we're gonna leave it there. Let's grab a synchronicity card now. God, Spirit, Universe, what do we need to know? What should we keep in mind? What would be the best mantra for us to kind of go over about as we go through the weekend? Right action. And you know what? Mars is the sign of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is about righteousness, right? Doing things right, okay? And Mars is what, you guys? Mars is our action. We need to act with integrity. We need to do the right thing. That's what I said in my last video. We need to do the right thing, even if it's a hard thing right now, because it will pay off in the end. There's delayed gratification. Rushing forward without a plan, without thinking things through right now, based on a fired up emotion within us, that is not the way. Right action is the cosmic advice as we move through the weekend. And the Lord shall guide thee continually, Isaiah 58:14. Trust God. Know his love is within you. Know God is guiding you, and there are no wrong turns or wrong words or wrong actions. Everything you are doing while holding this knowledge of God in your heart is leading you to your goal. Believe it. Your goal and success are yours right now. So self-focused, you guys, and we're trusting the process, okay? Like I said, even if things seem difficult on the surface right now, it's because there's something we need to learn through going through that process to actually help us get to our goal, help us get what we want, help us become who we're meant to become. This is a process of us stepping into our destiny. So there it is, you guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends if you think they would be into this type of astrology content as well. Leave me comments, you guys. So grateful for all of you. I really appreciate your feedback, knowing how this energy is affecting you out there. Let me know in my comment section below. If you want to know what's on this here whiteboard, I post a picture of those in a Facebook group that I have, which I will link in my description box below. That's where you can go to find that. And come back with me next week, you guys. We will be opening our week with a very explosive, I'm sorry, I just don't have a fiery, we could say that, very fiery full moon that we're gonna have going on in Gemini and Sagittarius on Monday. So I will be here to talk about it. You should be here too. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you next time, guys. Have a beautiful weekend, and until then, bye.